PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. My new book, King's Anti-Sicilians for Black, has arrived and I'm absolutely delighted with it. Lovely design, the guys at New in Chess have done a beautiful job. Nice hardback, good quality, 280 pages, a really nice layout. There we go, it's very, very cleanly designed. So I'm delighted with it. I'll put the link below where you can buy the book. So basically, this is a companion volume to King's Kalashnikov Sicilian. There we are. There's the two of them. So basically, if you play the Kalashnikov with black, like this, that's the Kalashnikov, and e5, etc. Then, of course, you also need to know what to do against all the anti-Sicilians, like the Rossolimo and the Alapin, the Mora Gambit, the closed Sicilian, and you know, many other lines. So basically, that's what this book is about. So it's a repertoire for black against all those anti-Sicilian variations. The official publication date is the 6th of November, but actually you can pre-order. So I'll stick the link below for you. Okay, well, I wanted to show you one particular variation that I cover in the book, which I'm really pleased with, actually. It's a little bit unusual. So I'm going to also look at a fantastic game between Jobava and Dita Nisipeanu. More on them in a second. But anyway, the variation, just want to cover very quickly, is this. So at this point, we could be going into a Grand Prix attack, maybe a closed Sicilian, maybe this bishop b5, that's quite trendy. I mean, I cover all those in the book. But knight e2 is a tricky move order. So this keeps white's options open. So white may return to an open Sicilian with d4. And that could sidestep a Kalashnikov. So for example, you know, if black plays e6 here, then d4, and that's an open Sicilian, which is fine for black, but it might not be the variation you want to play. So I was looking at this position and thinking, what could we do here? Well, there's e5, but that might just kind of chop off too many pieces. You know, I think that's the problem. Too many exchanges. And I thought, well, okay, I want to prevent d4, so why not play knight d4? This is such a common idea in all these anti-Sicilian variations. In the Kalashnikov, I call this the Trojan horse, and I'm persisting with that name. It can be really annoying for white, because if this is exchanged off, then it hits the knight, and white loses time, and it opens up the c-file. And yeah, how do you deal with that knight? It's a bit of a problem for white. I mean, it looks funny to play it at such an early stage in the game. But the more I looked at this, the more I thought, well, this is actually fine. So the two main moves that I cover in the book are knight takes d4 and also d3. So one of the ideas, let me just show you very quickly, is e5. So you protect the pawn. I mean, this looks absolutely fine for black. But now c3. Now you can just exchange off, but the move I like is d5. And because this knight blocks in the bishop, this is not so easy for white, actually. And there's a nice pawn sack. So, for example, this, queen a4 wins the d-pawn, but you can see that the knight blocks in that bishop. This bishop is locked in. This bishop can come into the game very easily. This is already in the game. In an endgame, castle's queenside could come very quickly, and black has a thumping initiative there for the pawn. It's very nice. That's really nice compensation. Of course, white might think, well, how do I bring this bishop into the game? That's when we hope for g3. If white had time for bishop g2, then that would be absolutely fine. But knight f3 is a slight issue. So, I think this is a really respectable move, actually. So this game, Jobava and Nisipeanu, two of the most creative grandmasters on the scene. I mean, they're both really aggressive and quite quirky. So in some ways, it's no surprise to see Nisipeanu play, something a little bit different like this. And Jobava goes his own way. He plays knight g3. I have to say, I'm not impressed by that move. I think leaving that knight in the middle of the board in this way is just fine for black. And I don't see what's wrong with g6 in this position, because it kind of covers these squares. It's usually good to play the bishop to g7 to cover d4. I mean, this looks fine. Instead, Nisipeanu played pawn to e6, but I think also absolutely fine. d3. And now it's possible just to play d5 and knight f6, and this looks really comfortable. But Nisipeanu played h5, again, really typical of his style. Very creative, very aggressive. If that's taken, then black crashes in on c2, and, well, at the moment that's an extra piece, but, well, it looks fine for black, basically. Good for black. So bishop e3 from Jobava. Bit of pressure here, so I can understand why that wasn't played, because then black has to make a decision about the knight. So instead, knight e7 played. So with the idea of putting that knight on c6 to support the knight here, that seems sensible. And Jobava decided, okay, I'm going to take that pawn now. And I think once again, this looks very good for black, actually. In this position, well, if white could recapture quickly, then it's fine. But d5 is incredibly strong. This didn't happen. I should say this is a rapid play game. And I think these kind of irrational positions, it's hard to determine exactly what's going on. In fact, d5 is incredibly strong. Because if bishop c5, then d4 followed by a check on a5, and this is great for black. Anyway, that wasn't played. Instead, Nisipeanu came up with another idea, queen b6, hitting this pawn. That was defended. And then he took on h5 and took on c2. So there's no rook to take. And then he exchanged off the bishop on e3. Well, this is very interesting. So he's basically just ditched an exchange and he's just carrying on. He's dragged the king into the middle. And white's position is, yeah, it's a bit ragged, but, well, it's still an extra exchange. But black actually has really good compensation here. Bishop e2 played. d4 is once again very strong, actually, and a check on a5. But bishop d7 played. He was obviously anxious to castle queenside, which is what happened. And rook takes f7 and d4. And this is very promising for black, actually. It's surprising because it feels like white has sort of broken through here, but actually black's pieces are very compact. The knight came back and knight c6. And basically, yeah, black's pieces are really well set up to go for white's king. I mean, c4 is a great move because it opens up the bishop. You can see these pawns will disappear, and then black's rook comes into the game. The queen and knight are standing there. And in fact, yeah, dare I say it, we have a serious split rook situation where white's forces simply don't coordinate. So Jobava decided to create some disturbance at the other end and gave back the exchange. And this does look pretty scary, actually. But in fact, the king just steps back and is completely safe. So what's going on at the other end of the board? Well, this is still really promising for black because this knight is very badly positioned. Shots in the rook. And this bishop is about to enter the game. In fact, all black's piece is about to enter the game. And this is what happened. A check. And bishop b4. Great move. Allowing the rook to sweep to f8. Now you'll notice the queen is on the same line as the king. And so bishop d2 is an absolute killer. There is no good square for that knight. Remember, there's going to be a deadly discovered check any moment. White is completely lost here. And the game finished like this. Knight d5, well, that got taken, of course. There's still a discovered check on offer, but Nisipeanu makes sure that it's absolutely deadly when it comes. So bishop c1, brilliant move. So that means that it shuts off the first rank, basically. So now that knight e2 double check and rook f1 would be mate. And if that's taken, then it's on a very unfortunate square check. And knight takes rook. Black's a rook up. Beautiful move, bishop c1 actually. Remember, it's a rapid play game, so this is pretty impressive. Queen e5 check was played, and king a8 was the final move of the game. Jobava resigned. Well, there is no defense. Black is a piece up, and yeah, something nasty is about to happen with knight e2. And if rook takes, then in fact in this case, you take the queen. So there we go. A really strange game, but beautifully played by Nisipeanu. Fantastic initiative. And yeah, knight d4, I think, is a really nice move that somehow, you know, on the third move sets white problems. It's very interesting. Okay, enough of that. Coming back to this. There we go. More details on this variation and all the other Anti-Sicilians in the book. And I'll put the link below where you can already pre-order. Thanks for watching.